The bridge of the starship Indomitable was quiet. Too quiet. Admiral Park stood at the center of the command deck, his hands clasped behind his back. He was a tall man with gray hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. Today, those eyes were fixed on the main display screen, and what he saw made his heart turn cold. Colony 7 was burning. The images came from a rescue ship that had arrived too late. Smoke rose from broken buildings. Streets that had once been filled with families and children were now empty and black with ash. The beautiful domes that protected the colony from the harsh atmosphere of the planet had been shattered. Everything was destroyed. 2.3 million people had lived on 7. Farmers, teachers, doctors, children. They had built a home on a distant world far from Earth. They had planted gardens and opened schools. They had celebrated birthdays and weddings. They had lived simple, peaceful lives. Now they were all dead. Lieutenant stood at her station, her fingers frozen above her controls. She was young, barely 30 years old, but she had served under Admiral Park for 5 years. She had never seen him look like this. His face showed no emotion, but his eyes burned with something dark and terrible. "Sir," she said, her voice shaking slightly, "we have confirmed the attack came from the Dominion. Their fleet appeared without warning. The colony had no military defenses. The attack lasted only 20 minutes. 20 minutes. That was all it took to kill 2.3 million people." Admiral Park did not move. He continued to stare at the screen, at the ruins of what had once been a thriving human settlement. They had not come to conquer. They had not come to negotiate or demand surrender. They had come simply to destroy. "Why?" someone whispered from the back of the bridge. Park knew why. Everyone knew why. The Dominion was one of the oldest empires in the galaxy. They had ruled their region of space for 12,000 years. They saw themselves as superior to all other species. When humanity had first ventured into the stars 50 years ago, they had watched with amusement. These new creatures with their soft bodies and short lives were not a threat. They were barely worth noticing. But humanity had grown. Slowly, quietly, humans had built colonies on dozens of worlds. They had developed new technologies. They had established trade routes with other species, and some of those trade routes passed through space that they considered theirs. 7 had been in disputed territory. They had warned humanity to leave. Humanity had tried to negotiate to find a peaceful solution. They had responded by burning the colony to the ground. This was a lesson, they believed, a demonstration of power. The weak must bow to the strong. This was how the galaxy worked. "Admiral," Lieutenant said, "we are receiving a transmission from a command vessel. They wish to speak with you." Park finally moved. He turned his head slightly toward, put it on screen. The image shifted. The burning colony was replaced by the face of a commander. There were crystalline beings, their bodies made of living mineral that pulsed with soft, colored light. This one glowed deep purple, a sign of high rank. Its voice came through the translators as a flat, emotionless monotone. "Human Admiral, I am commander of the Dominion. Your colony existed in territory claimed by our empire. We gave warning. You did not listen. This was the consequence. We are prepared to discuss terms for your remaining settlements in this region. We are not unreasonable. Submit your territorial claims for review, and we will inform you which of your colonies may remain." The bridge crew stared at the screen in disbelief. They had just murdered millions of innocent people, and now they spoke of negotiations as if discussing a minor business matter. Admiral Park looked at the commander for a long moment. His face was still empty of expression. When he spoke, his voice was calm. "No." The commander's crystalline form flickered with confusion. "I do not understand. No to which proposal?" "No to everything," Park said. "No negotiations, no discussions, no terms." "Admiral, you seem to misunderstand your position. Your species is young and weak. Your fleet is small. We have hundreds of thousands of ships. We have destroyed empires far greater than yours. If you do not negotiate, we will simply take what we want." Park reached out and pressed a button on his command console. The transmission ended. The commander's image vanished, replaced by the burning remains of 7. "Sir," Lieutenant asked uncertainly, "what are your orders?" Park was quiet for a moment. Every officer on the bridge was watching him. They expected him to call for reinforcements, to contact Earth Command, to begin planning a defensive strategy. They were right about one thing. Humanity's official fleet was small, only about 300 warships. Against the might of the Dominion, it seemed hopeless. But Admiral Park knew something that they did not, something that most of his own crew did not know. "Contact Admiral at Special Operations Command," he said quietly. "Tell her to activate Omega Protocol." A ripple of shock passed through the bridge. Lieutenant's eyes went wide. "Sir, the Omega Protocol is real. I thought it was just a rumor, a story to scare new recruits." Park turned to look at her. For the first time, something like a smile crossed his face, but it was not a pleasant smile. It was the smile of a predator. "It is very real, Lieutenant. Humanity has been preparing for this day for 30 years. The galaxy thinks they know us. They think we are soft, peaceful, weak." He turned back to the screen, to the images of his dead people. "They are about to learn how wrong they are." He walked toward the exit of the bridge, then stopped at the door. "Lieutenant, send a message to all human colonies and outposts. Tell them to prepare for war, not a war of defense, not a war of survival." His voice dropped to something cold and hard. "A war of annihilation." Swallowed hard. "Sir, the Dominion has existed for 12,000 years. They have never lost a war. How can we possibly?" "They have never fought humans," Park interrupted. "They have fought species that negotiate, species that accept losses and make peace, species that know when to surrender." He looked at her with those burning eyes. "We are not that kind of species, Lieutenant. When someone kills our people, we do not negotiate. We do not accept. We do not forgive. We keep coming until there is nothing left of our enemy. That is what makes us human." He left the bridge. Behind him, the crew sat in stunned silence, watching the smoke rise from the ruins of 7. Somewhere in the darkness of space, far from any planet or star that appeared on any official map, something ancient and terrible began to wake. Ships that had been sleeping in the void for decades powered up their engines. Crews that had trained in secret their entire lives received the signal they had been waiting for. The Omega Protocol was active. And the galaxy was about to learn that when you killed human children, when you burned human homes, when you thought you could teach humanity to be afraid, you made a terrible mistake. Because humans did not learn fear. They taught it. Station Prime was the largest structure ever built by living beings. It floated at the center of the galaxy's most important trade routes, a massive ring of metal and glass that was home to millions of creatures from hundreds of different species. At its heart was the Great Assembly Hall, where representatives from all the galaxy's civilizations came to talk, to trade, and to settle their disputes with words instead of weapons. For 10,000 years, the Assembly had kept the peace. Wars still happened, of course. Species still fought over territory and resources. But the Assembly provided a place where enemies could become trading partners, where conflicts could be resolved through negotiation. It was the foundation of galactic civilization. Today, the Assembly Hall was packed with representatives from every corner of known space. Word of the attack on the human colony had spread quickly, and everyone wanted to see what would happen next. Most expected the usual pattern. The humans would be angry. They would demand justice. They would offer some token payment, perhaps return some territory. Both sides would eventually agree to a compromise. This was how things worked. Ambassador Lee walked into the Great Hall with her 2 aides behind her. She was a small woman with short black hair and calm, steady eyes. She wore a simple dark suit, no medals or decorations. She looked almost ordinary compared to the elaborate costumes and glittering jewelry worn by many other ambassadors. But something about the way she walked made other species step aside. There was no fear in her movements, no uncertainty. She walked like someone who already knew exactly what was going to happen. The representative spoke first. It was a tall crystalline being that glowed with soft blue light, a sign of diplomatic status. Its voice echoed through the hall's translation systems. We welcome humanity's representative to this discussion. The Dominion regrets the unfortunate incident at your colony. We understand that emotions may be high. We are prepared to discuss reasonable compensation and territorial adjustments that will prevent future misunderstandings. A murmur of approval rippled through the assembly. This was proper diplomatic language. They were being generous, offering to negotiate. Surely the humans would accept. Ambassador Lee stopped at the speaking platform. She looked at the representative, then slowly turned to face the entire assembly. "Incident," she said. Her voice was quiet but perfectly clear. "You killed 2.3 million people. You burned our homes. You murdered our children. And you call this an incident?" The representative's crystalline form pulsed with irritation. "Ambassador, please, let us not be dramatic. Your colony was in disputed territory. Warnings were given. Your government chose to ignore them. Actions have consequences." "Yes," Lee said, "they do." She reached into her jacket and pulled out a small device. She placed it on the speaking platform. A hologram appeared above it, showing a complex star map covered in red markers. "These are the locations of every military installation, shipyard, and fleet base," Lee said. "We have watched your empire for 50 years. We have mapped every defense station. We know where your ships are built, where your admirals sleep, where your weapons are stored." The assembly hall fell completely silent. Even the representative seemed frozen in place. "In 71 hours," Lee continued, "all of these locations will be destroyed." The silence shattered into chaos. Hundreds of voices shouted at once. The representative's body flared with bright purple light, a sign of extreme agitation. "This is madness," it cried. "The Dominion has existed for 12,000 years. Our fleet numbers in the hundreds of thousands of ships. You have perhaps 300 vessels. You cannot seriously believe." "We do not believe," Lee interrupted. "We know." She turned off the hologram and put the device back in her pocket. "For 30 years, humanity has been building. Not the 300 ships you see on your sensors. Those are merely our visible fleet. Our diplomatic fleet, you might say." She smiled, and several species in the audience physically recoiled. There was something in that smile that spoke of very old instincts, of predators and prey, of hunters and the hunted. "The real fleet has been waiting in the dark places between stars, 4,000 warships, each one designed for a single purpose." She paused. "Destruction." The ambassador, a serpentine being known throughout the galaxy for its wisdom, raised itself up from its coiled position. "Ambassador Lee, surely you understand the implications of what you are saying. The Galactic Assembly exists to prevent exactly this kind of escalation. Negotiation is the foundation of our civilization. If every species responded to attacks with total war, the galaxy would be nothing but ashes." Lee turned to face the. "You are right, Ambassador. Negotiation has kept the peace for 10,000 years. And in all that time, how many species have been bullied, threatened, and destroyed by empires like the? How many colonies have been burned because their species was too weak to fight back? How many children have died because their parents believed in negotiation?" She shook her head. "We are not like you. We did not evolve in a galaxy where the strong protected the weak. We evolved on a world where predators hunted us for millions of years. We survived not because we were stronger or faster, but because we never stopped fighting. We never gave up. We never accepted that we were prey." She turned back to the representative. "You thought you could teach us to be afraid. You thought if you killed enough of us, we would learn our place. You were wrong. You did not teach us fear. You reminded us what we are." "And what is that?" they demanded. "The most dangerous species this galaxy has ever known," Lee said simply. "We do not negotiate with those who murder our children. We do not make peace with those who burn our homes. We hunt them down. We destroy everything they have built. And we make sure they can never threaten anyone ever again." She began to walk toward the exit. The assembly watched in stunned silence. "Wait," the representative called. "You cannot simply leave. We demand to negotiate. We will offer reparations. We will return territory. We will." Lee stopped but did not turn around. "You will do nothing. In 71 hours your military will cease to exist. Your empire will fall, and the galaxy will understand something important." "What is that?" someone asked. Lee finally turned. Her eyes moved across the crowded assembly hall, meeting the gazes of hundreds of different species. When she spoke, her voice carried to every corner of the vast chamber. "Humans protect their own, always. No matter the cost. If you trade with us, we will be your best partners. If you need help, we will be the first to offer it. If you are our friend, we will die for you." Her voice hardened. "But if you hurt our people, if you kill our children, if you threaten our homes, we will not stop until you are destroyed. Not defeated, not conquered, destroyed, completely, forever." She walked out of the great hall. Her two aides followed in silence. Behind her, the assembly erupted into chaos. Representatives shouted, argued, pleaded. They demanded action. The older empires called for emergency meetings. But underneath all the noise, there was a new feeling spreading through Station Prime. Fear. For 10,000 years, the galaxy had operated on a simple understanding. The strong ruled. The weak submitted. Negotiation maintained a balance that favored those with power. Humanity had just announced that they did not accept this understanding. They did not care about balance or tradition or diplomatic norms. They cared only about their people. And when someone hurt their people, they responded not with words but with total, absolute annihilation. The countdown had begun. 71 hours until the galaxy changed forever. In the empty space between galaxies, where no star shone and no planet spun, Commander stood on the bridge of the Silent Fury and watched her fleet come alive. She was a woman of 45 years, her hair streaked with gray, her face marked by decades of hard training and quiet patience. She had been waiting for this day since she was 15 years old, when she had been selected for the most secret program in human history. The Omega Fleet. Around her ship, spread across millions of kilometers of empty void, 4,000 warships powered up their engines. They had been built in secret, in shipyards hidden in asteroid fields and gas giant moons, far from any trade routes or sensor networks. Their crews had lived in isolation for years, training constantly, preparing for a war that many had believed would never come. Now it had come, and they were ready. "All ships report battle stations manned and ready, Commander," her tactical officer announced. He was a young man named Han, one of the best tactical minds in the fleet. He had been training for this since childhood. "The fleet is at full operational capacity." Nodded, she looked at the holographic display that filled the center of her bridge, showing the positions of all 4,000 ships. They were arranged in perfect attack formations, each vessel knowing its role, its targets, its mission. "Show me the defense network," she ordered. The display shifted. The empty void was replaced by a map of the Dominion. Thousands of red markers indicated military installations, fleet positions, shipyards, and defense stations. They had built their empire over 12,000 years, layer upon layer of fortifications and armaments. They believed themselves untouchable. "Initial targets are locked," reported. "Outer defense stations and early warning systems first. Once those are down, we move to the shipyards, then the fleet staging areas, then the command centers." Studied the map. "How long until we reach the first targets?" 18 hours at current speed, But Commander hesitated. Should we not attempt contact? The assembly might convince them to surrender. There might be a peaceful solution. Turned to look at her young officer. He was brilliant at tactics and strategy, but he was still naive about some things. She had been the same once. "Tell me, Lieutenant," she said quietly, "do you have family on Earth?" "Yes, Commander. My parents live in, my sister has 2 children." "And if they attacked, if they killed your parents, your sister, her children, would you want a peaceful solution?" Was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was hard. "No, Commander, I would want them destroyed." "That is why there will be no negotiations," said. 2.3 million of our people are dead, families, children, they burned them like they were nothing. They did not offer warning or mercy. They simply killed. She turned back to the display. "We will show them the same courtesy." A communication signal beeped, touched her console, and the face of Admiral Park appeared on screen. He looked tired but focused. "Commander, I am transmitting the final authorization codes now. Omega Protocol is fully active. You have complete tactical authority." "Understood, Admiral. The fleet is ready." Park nodded. "I know you have trained for this your entire life. I know every person in that fleet has sacrificed everything for this moment. But I need to say something before you begin." "Sorry." "What we are about to do will change the galaxy forever. They have existed for 12,000 years. In 3 days we will destroy their military completely. Other species will see this. Some will fear us, some will hate us. Some will try to stop us before we become too powerful." Park's eyes were steady. "We cannot control how the galaxy responds. All we can do is make sure that no one ever attacks human civilians again. That is your mission, Commander, not conquest, not revenge. Protection. We do this so that no one will ever think our people are easy targets again." Saluted. "Understood, Admiral, we will not fail." Park returned the salute. "Good hunting, Commander." Park out. The screen went dark, stood for a moment in silence, then turned to her crew. "All hands, this is Commander. In a few hours we will engage the Dominion in combat. Some of you have waited your entire lives for this. Some of you are afraid. That is natural. Fear keeps us sharp." She paused, looking at the faces of her bridge crew. Young and old, men and women, all of them watching her with steady eyes. "But remember why we are here. Remember 7. Remember the 2.3 million people who died because they thought we were weak. They thought they could kill our children and we would simply accept it. They thought wrong." She raised her voice. "We are the Omega Fleet. We are the sword of humanity. We do not negotiate. We do not surrender. We fight until our enemies are destroyed and our people are safe. Today, we show the galaxy what happens when you harm human beings." A roar of approval came from the bridge crew and echoed through the ship's communication system as officers throughout the Silent Fury responded. Across the fleet, 4,000 ships heard their commander's words and answered with their own battle cries. Turned to her tactical officer. "Lieutenant, set course for the first target, maximum attack speed." "Yes, Commander." Fingers flew across his console. "Course laid in. Engines at full power. We will reach the outer defense stations in 17 hours 42 minutes. The Silent Fury surged forward, and behind it, 4,000 warships followed. They moved through the void like a pack of wolves, silent and deadly, hunting prey that did not yet know death was coming. On the bridge, stood at the center of her command, watching the stars slide past on the. She thought of her grandmother, who had told her stories of the old wars on Earth, of times when humanity had faced extinction and refused to die, of soldiers who had fought against impossible odds because surrender was never an option. We are still the same, she thought, still fighting, still surviving, still refusing to bow. The thought they were dealing with a young, weak species. They thought humanity would learn to fear them. They thought a demonstration of power would make humans submit, the way it had made so many other species submit over 12,000 years. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Because humans had been fighting for survival since they first walked on two legs. They had hunted predators larger than themselves. They had survived ice ages and famines and plagues. They had clawed their way from caves to the stars through pure, stubborn refusal to give up. They had killed human children. And now the wolves were coming. 17 hours and 42 minutes until the hunt began. 17 hours and 42 minutes until the galaxy learned what humanity was truly capable of. Smiled, and it was not a pleasant smile. Let them learn, she thought. Let them all learn. We are humanity. And we do not forgive. The first warning came at 3:47 hours, standard time. A sensor station on the outer edge of the Dominion detected something strange. Ships, hundreds of ships, coming fast. The station commander, a young named, sent an urgent message to the nearest fleet base. Unknown vessels approaching at attack speed, requesting identification and intercept support. He never received a response. Before his message had even finished transmitting, the Silent Fury dropped out of hyperspace directly above his station. One shot from its main cannon turned the station into dust. Across the border, the same scene repeated itself 100 times. Sensor stations, early warning platforms, communication relays, all destroyed within minutes. The defense network, built over centuries to detect and respond to threats, went blind in less than an hour. Commander watched the tactical display as her fleet moved through space like a knife through water. Red markers representing enemy installations blinked out one after another. Phase 1 complete, Lieutenant reported. All border defenses eliminated, moving to Phase 2. Phase 2 was the shipyards. They built their warships in massive orbital facilities around their industrial worlds. Each shipyard could produce dozens of vessels per month. They were the heart of the Dominion's military power, protected by rings of defense stations and patrol fleets. The patrol fleets were the first to respond to the invasion. They jumped to intercept the human attackers, confident in their numerical superiority. After all, the humans had perhaps 300 ships in their entire navy. How could they possibly threaten the mighty Dominion? Then they saw the Omega Fleet. 4,000 human warships emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. They did not pause. They did not hesitate. They did not attempt to communicate. They simply opened fire. The commanders had never seen weapons like this. Human ships fired beams of focused energy that cut through shields like they were made of paper. Missiles that moved faster than sensors could track slammed into crystalline hulls and shattered them. In the first major engagement, they lost 400 ships in 30 minutes. They tried to surrender. Human vessels, we submit. We surrender, please stop firing. The transmission played on the bridge of the Silent Fury. Commander listened to it in silence. Then she turned to her communications officer. Did they accept surrender from 7? She asked. No, Commander, they did not. Then we do not accept surrender either. Continue the attack. The battle continued. By the time it ended, every ship in the system was destroyed. News of the defeat spread through the Dominion at the speed of light, carried by panicked messengers and desperate emergency broadcasts. 12,000 years of supremacy had taught them that they were invincible. Now they were learning otherwise. Admiral, the same commander who had ordered the attack on 7, gathered the largest fleet in history. 6,000 warships assembled at the Dominion's military capital, ready to crush the human invasion once and for all. Sent a message to the human fleet. Your attack has been impressive, but it ends here. You are outnumbered and far from home. Surrender now and we will show mercy. Continue this foolishness and every human world will burn as 7 burned. Commander read the message on her bridge. Her crew watched her, waiting for her response. Lieutenant, she said calmly, how many enemy ships? 6,000, Commander. They us by 50%. And their defensive positions. Strong. They have fortified the orbital platforms and deployed in a standard defensive formation. Nodded slowly. Show me their command ship. The tactical display zoomed in on a massive crystalline vessel at the center of the formation. It was the flagship of Admiral, protected by hundreds of escort ships. That is our target, said. All ships attack pattern Omega-7. Strike teams Alpha through Delta. You have one objective. Destroy that command ship. The rest of the fleet will engage the enemy formation and create an opening. Looked at her with concern. Commander, that will cost us significant casualties. We could attempt a more cautious approach. They killed our children, Lieutenant. His voice was quiet but firm. They burned our homes. Caution is not what this situation requires. Victory is. And victory means showing the galaxy that attacking humans has consequences. Immediate, devastating consequences. She opened a channel to the entire fleet. All ships, this is Commander. The enemy has assembled their full strength to stop us. They believe numbers will save them. They are wrong. Today we show them what humanity is made of. Today we avenge 7. Attack. The Omega fleet surged forward. What followed was the largest space battle in galactic history. 6,000 ships against 4,000 human warships. They fought with desperation, knowing that their entire civilization depended on victory. They threw everything they had at the human fleet. It was not enough. Human ships moved with perfect coordination, each vessel knowing its role in the larger strategy. They fought not as individuals but as a single organism, striking and withdrawing, concentrating fire on weak points, exploiting every gap in the formation. The strike teams punched through the enemy lines with brutal efficiency. They lost ships, many ships, but they kept coming. When one ship was destroyed, another took its place. When one captain fell, another stepped up to lead. And always, they advanced toward the command ship. Admiral watched in disbelief as his fleet was systematically torn apart. This was impossible. The Dominion had fought 100 wars. They had crushed empires far larger than humanity. How could these primitive creatures be defeating them? Admiral, one of his officers, cried out. They are breaking through the escort perimeter. They are targeting our ship directly. Saw them coming. A dozen human ships, battered and burning but still moving, driving straight toward his flagship. He opened a channel to broadcast a surrender. Human vessels, I offer unconditional surrender. The Dominion admits defeat. Please stop this slaughter. The human ships did not slow down. They did not respond. In the final moment before impact, finally understood. This was not a war. This was not a battle for territory or resources or power. This was punishment. The humans were not trying to defeat they were trying to destroy them, to send a message to the entire galaxy that would never be forgotten. The Silent Fury fired its main cannon directly into the heart of the command ship. The crystalline structure shattered like glass. And Admiral, the commander who had ordered the death of 2.3 million humans, ceased to exist. The battle was over. When the count was finally complete, they had lost 5,000 ships. The humans had lost 800. It was the most one-sided major fleet engagement in galactic history. But Commander did not celebrate. She stood on her bridge, looking at the wreckage that filled the space around her, and thought of the people of 7, the families, the children, the lives that could never be returned. This does not bring them back, she said quietly. Victory does not bring them back. Lieutenant stood beside her. No, Commander, it does not. But it means no one else will have to die like they did. After today, no species in the galaxy will ever attack human civilians again. Nodded slowly. That is all we can do, protect the living, avenge the dead, and make sure it never happens again. She turned to her communications officer. Send word to Admiral Park. Phase 2 complete. Beginning Phase 3, total demilitarization of the Dominion. The war was not over. There were still shipyards to destroy, fleet bases to neutralize, weapons factories to demolish. It would take 3 more days to finish the job. But the outcome was no longer in doubt. The Dominion, the mightiest empire the galaxy had ever known, was falling. And humanity was rising. The Dominion still existed, but only as a shadow of its former self. Their fleet was gone, destroyed or seized by human forces. Their shipyards were rubble. Their weapons factories had been dismantled under human supervision. An empire that had dominated the region for 12,000 years was now permitted only a small defensive force, barely enough to patrol their own borders. The Galactic Assembly had met in emergency sessions 17 times since the war ended. They had debated, argued, and passed dozens of resolutions condemning human aggression. None of it mattered. The humans had not asked for permission, and they did not ask for forgiveness. Ambassador now occupied the permanent human seat at the Assembly. He was a calm, soft-spoken man in his 50s, with gray hair and kind eyes. He smiled often and spoke politely to everyone. Many species found this confusing. They had expected human representatives to be fierce and aggressive after the war. Instead, seemed like a gentle grandfather. But those who looked closely saw something else in his eyes, a quiet certainty, a patient strength. The galaxy had learned that humans could be the deadliest predators in the universe when threatened. Now they were learning that humans could also be the most gracious victors, as long as no one gave them a reason to be otherwise. On Station Prime, Ambassador Lee hosted a private dinner for the new Speaker of the Assembly. The diplomat Thoughtful Tide had been elected to the position 3 months ago, partly because they were known for their neutrality and wisdom, and partly because everyone was too afraid to put forward a more controversial candidate. The dinner was simple, human food prepared by his personal chef. They could not eat most of it, but Thoughtful Tide appreciated the gesture. "I have spent the past 6 months studying your species," Thoughtful Tide said, its translation membrane converting its thoughts into human speech. "I have read your history. I have watched recordings of your wars. I have interviewed dozens of humans across many worlds." Sipped her wine, "And what have you learned?" "Many things." The settled its body into a more comfortable position, its membrane rippling with complex emotions. "But one thing stands out above all others. You are a species of contradictions." "How so?" "You are capable of great kindness. Your aid workers travel to the worlds in the galaxy to help species you have never met. Your scientists share their discoveries freely. Your merchants are known for fair dealing. In many ways, you are the most generous species I have ever encountered." Nodded, and the contradiction. "When someone threatens your people, all that kindness vanishes." Thoughtful Tide's membrane flickered with something that might have been fear or admiration. "They killed 2.3 million of your civilians. In response, you destroyed an empire that had existed for 12,000 years. You did not negotiate. You did not seek compromise. You simply annihilated their military capability completely." "Yes," said simply, "we did." "I have spoken with military historians from a dozen species. They all say the same thing. In all of recorded galactic history, no one has ever responded to an attack with such complete and overwhelming force. Most species calculate costs and benefits. They fight until the price becomes too high, then negotiate." Thoughtful Tide paused. "Humans do not seem to calculate at all when someone hurts their people." Set down her wine glass. "May I tell you a story, Speaker?" "Please." 300,000 years ago, my ancestors lived on the grasslands of a planet called Earth. We were not the strongest species on that world. We were not the fastest. Many predators hunted us. Lions, leopards, hyenas. By all logic, we should have gone extinct. Thoughtful Tide listened carefully. This was the kind of wisdom they valued most. The deep history of a species often explained its present behavior. "But we survived," continued. "Not because we were strong, but because we protected each other. When a lion attacked our tribe, every adult who could hold a rock or a stick would fight. Even if the lion killed some of us, we would make sure the lion died too. Over time, the predators learned to leave us alone. The cost of attacking humans was too high. She met Thoughtful Tide's gaze with steady eyes. That instinct never left us. We are not aggressive by nature. We do not seek war or conquest. We simply want to live in peace, raise our families, explore the universe. But when someone threatens our tribe, when someone kills our children, something very ancient wakes up inside us. And that instinct is what drove you to destroy the... Yes, his voice was calm but firm. The thought they could kill our people and we would learn to fear them. They did not understand that attacking humans has the opposite effect. It does not make us afraid. It makes us angry. It makes us united. It makes us willing to pay any price to ensure that the threat is eliminated forever. Thoughtful Tide was quiet for a long moment. Finally, it spoke. I have recommended to the Assembly that no species ever threaten human civilians again. I heard about that recommendation. Why did you make it? Because I understand you now. This membrane rippled with something like sad acceptance. For 10,000 years, the galaxy has operated on a simple principle. The strong rule, the weak submit, and everyone negotiates to avoid the worst outcomes. Humans do not fit into this system. You do not want to rule. You do not wish to conquer. But when someone crosses the line, you do not stop until they can never threaten you again. Nodded, that is correct. Some species call this disproportionate. And what do you call it? Thoughtful Tide considered the question carefully before answering. I call it effective. Smiled, and for the first time it was a warm smile, without the cold edge that had frightened so many in the assembly hall months ago. We do not want enemies, Speaker. We want friends. We want trading partners and allies. We want to explore the galaxy together with all its wonderful species and discover all its secrets. She reached out and gently touched the edge of this membrane, a gesture of friendship. But we will never sacrifice our children's safety for diplomatic convenience. We will never accept attacks on our civilians as a cost of doing business. If that makes some species uncomfortable, so be it. Thoughtful Tide accepted the gesture of friendship. I believe this is the beginning of a new era for the galaxy, Ambassador Lee. What kind of era? A peaceful one, I hope. This membrane shimmered with cautious optimism, because every species now knows the price of war with humanity, and I believe most will decide that peace is preferable. Raised her wine glass. To peace, then. To peace, Thoughtful Tide agreed. They sat together in comfortable silence as the stars turned slowly outside the viewing window. Somewhere out in the galaxy, human ships patrolled the borders of the former Dominion, making sure the peace was maintained. On dozens of worlds, human merchants and scientists and tourists moved freely among aliens who treated them with new respect. And in the memorial garden on Earth, 2.3 million names were carved into a wall of black stone, so that no one would ever forget. Every day, people came to leave flowers and say prayers for the dead of 7. Every day, they renewed their promise. Never again. Humanity had sent a message to the galaxy, written in fire and blood. They were willing to be friends with anyone. They were willing to help, to trade, to cooperate. They were the best partners any species could ask for. But if you killed their people, if you burned their homes, if you harmed their children, they would not negotiate. They would not compromise. They would not stop until you were no longer a threat to anyone, ever again. Some species called this terrifying. Others called it reassuring. All of them called it human. And the galaxy was never the same again.